Welcome to the Zawya Podcast. Today we are speaking to Cheick-Oumar Sylla, the IFC Director for North Africa and the Horn of Africa. We are focusing on Egypt and the role the IFC can play to support the private sector at this critical moment. A moment where the country is struggling to reel out of yet another economic crisis. Can you please start by giving us an overview of the IFC activities in Egypt?
Yeah, so IFC in Egypt is really is a good picture of what IFC is doing, globally. We are engaged in several, key sectors which are quite aligned with the government, strategy. So we are quite active on the power sector, in the health sector. Also in the digital tech sector, we did a lot of investment in the fintech side. We also have a strong engagement, healthcare sector, and we are stepping up as well, our engagement in the financial sector. These are, I would say, on the investment side. But IFC is not only for investment. We do a lot of advisory, be it with the government or with the client. We have, as of today, around 30 advisory activities going on in Egypt.
How much funds have you allocated to Egypt so far?
Today, as of today, we have a portfolio of around 1.4 billion, in Egypt. And since 2005, our investment in Egypt is around 3.6, billion, what we have done in the country. In December, just after the successful COP in Sharm el-Sheikh, we closed with AMEA Power and with a lot of international, financier, 1,000, megawatt wind and solar plant. So this is around a 1 billion, project. So on top of that, we are still, continuing our activities in greening, the Egyptian, ecosystem, but looking as well on other investment. I mentioned to you the healthcare, sector, the financial sector, the SMEs sector, the microfinance sector are all the sectors that we are looking at.
Now that we're faced with global as well as local monetary tightening policies, how can the IFC ease access to finance for Egypt's private sector?
On the access, to finance, we work with financial institutions, other, banks or microfinance, institution. I think I can give two examples. One example with a CIB, when we provide two types of financing, a dedicated line of financing for SMEs, and another financing which was related to issuance of a green bond, by CIB. The other one is an advisory services what we provided to Bank Mix, which allowed the bank, to really improve and extend significantly its banking, for women in Egypt.
What impact are you trying to achieve in Egypt?
Focus for us is really to make the private sector, more relevant. If I take one example of what we are doing in the climate, space, on top of supporting financing, in the specific sector, we are engaging with Egyptian, companies to improve, their resource, efficiency, because generating power is one thing, but if you can, produce with less, carbon, emission, this is part as well of greening, I would say, the economy.
What are your thoughts on the state ownership document which the government released last year? I mean, the document where the government pledged to reduce its footprint in the economy and give more space to the private sector.
No, first of all, I think that we really have, to thank, the authorities, because this was an inclusive, process, and IFC and other, partners have to provide, inputs. For us, is a very, strong, signal that the government wants, more private sector, engagement.
What role can the IFC play in this privatization plan?
The IFC role can be different. We can support one private company who are interested, to acquire one of these companies. We can also, if the government, which, to advise the government on how best, to privatize, some of these companies, as well. So our role is can be either, really on direct, financing, or on the advising side, as well.
For long, multilateral partners have complained that the Egyptian government was dragging its feet on privatization. What are your thoughts on that?
My answer will be very, simple. I took, this position, 6 months ago, and when I came, in the middle of this state-owned, program, and from that date to now, the only thing that you can see and observe, like me, is that this is becoming a reality. So for me, we are just to be very factual, to say that, the government commit to something and this thing is happening, today. So we just have, to see this as a very strong signal. And we at IFC are trying to see how we can help, to the success of this program.
Do you have any concerns that the government might not be serious about privatization this time?
I have no indication of that. There is an ongoing process. We know that the process, may face, such challenges, but I think the direction are very clear, and the intention of the government as well is very clear. As I mentioned, the government, make this document, public. You cannot expect that all that is in the document will be just, developed, in 1 year. I would say you have to give the time to roll out, the program. The first step is exactly what the government is doing now with these 32 companies which has been, selected for, I would say, listing or selling. And I think that after that, you will have a second batch. So I think we just have to be very pragmatic. There is something on the table today. Let's try to work on that. And then we will see what next.
In your opinion, how can Egypt put a stop to these recurrent economic crises? Skyrocketing inflation, currency devaluation, wide financing gap.
I'm not a macroeconomist. The only thing, again, history is history. I think with this global, crisis that we are seeing of starting, with COVID, and all the impact that we have, on the supply chain. To think again that we need to come, I would say, to what Egypt, has done and what the government has taken, as a measure. The last one was, on top there, the government, own program is the agreement with the IMF. And I think that the government, is taking I would say the fiscal and monetary measure that they think that are needed, to address, this extraordinary, situation.
Do you have any forecast for Egypt's economic growth?
Again, I told you that I'm not a macroeconomist. What I can say is that we as an IFC believe, in the future of Egypt. And we are eager, to strengthen our operation in Egypt. And maybe one thing that we did not really touch is one of IFC ambition is to really identify, some local Egyptian, champion, and really try, to bring them, outside, Egypt. And I think this is quite also aligned with the strategy of the government to really try to increase the export of so export you can improve it by being very competitive and export product, but one way as well to do that is to export your companies in other countries, and this is really at the core of our strategy as well to bring some Egyptian companies in West Africa, Central Africa or elsewhere.
Are you already working on that?
Yes.
Have you already identified companies?
Yes. Are mainly on the manufacturing sector. Companies who are leading Egyptian company in the manufacturing sector, here. We have, some also large agro-industrial Egyptian, company who are today operating in neighboring countries like Sudan, who want to expand, across, Africa. So there is a number of good example, but we still have to identify more of these companies.
What are your thoughts on Egypt's startup scene?
Again, I think for the startup is a extremely vibrant ecosystem in Egypt. We, as a IFC, are several investment in fund in fintech companies here in Egypt, and we really see a very dynamic sector, and we are very keen to really continue to support this activity. One sector as well that IFC is looking at in Africa is what we call the creative industries. Egypt has a fantastic, I would say, textile ecosystem. You have very dynamic film industries. So this is a kind of news area where IFC is also looking at, and we try to see how we can also support Egypt in this area. Could be fashion, it could be music, it could be, but it's a quite new engagement.
Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you for your time as well.